All right, guys, so here we are loading the Cherokee 6 for another adventure to Kentucky. Why don't you come on board and join us, because we have a lot of things to talk about. All right, guys, so today, buckle up. We're going to be going cross country. We're going to go from Denver to Kentucky. Let's get ready to go. All right, so the first thing we do is we get the ATIS, then we're going to send the altimeter, which is 2995. It does match with the altitude, so you want to confirm your altitude, make sure that it is according to the airport elevation, and it is, so we're good. The other thing I did was uploaded the flight plan, which is this flight plan that I have here. Now we have our flight plan route right over here, and actually on the Dynon as well. So once I upload it here, it'll automatically transfer to my Dynon HDX. We are doing VFR today, which is pretty unusual for me. Usually I do IFR, but today the weather is great. I'm not anticipating any bad weather, so we should be expecting pretty much clear skies all the way through, which is also very unusual. So today we're just going to enjoy the scenery, and we're going to be flying VFR today. This is a very long flight, so we're going to be doing a few series of videos which are going to be pretty interesting, so you want to make sure that you stay tuned for the next video and subscribe and make sure that you keep up with all the latest videos that we put out. So we're going to be going from Centennial, Colorado over to Higginsville, Missouri. From there we're going to fuel up. We're going to stretch and rest a little bit, and then we're going to continue on over to Big Sandy Airport from Higginsville. Expected flight for our first route is going to be 3.5 hours. The other thing I did was I let the airplane warm up a little bit, and now we can go ahead and start doing our run-up. All right, we are rolling. We're going to test our brakes. Brakes are good.
Brake set.
Brake set.
Fuel proper tank.
Fuel is on the proper tank. We got it on the right main.
Trim for takeoff.
Trim for takeoff.
Flight controls.
Flight controls. Free and correct.
Instruments.
Instruments are in the green.
Annunciating.
No annunciations.
Mixture, best power.
Mixture will set when we do the 2000.
Primer.
Primer is in and locked.
2000 RPM.
Okay, 2000. Go ahead and set our mixture. On this airplane, we got 4 fuel tanks. So what I like to do is, on takeoff, I like to do a timer. Now, I do also have other, like on the GPS and even on the transponder, I do have it set for a countdown automatically on the tanks. But I like this countdown timer because I like the 30 minutes intervals, and I like when it tells me time expired. I like the timer. That's just how I do it. It's no right or wrong. Good morning, Centennial Ground. Cherokee 3620 Whiskey at Charlie 1. Run-up is complete. We have Foxtrot. We'll be departing VFR eastbound today.
Cherokee 20 Whiskey, Romeo 10, taxi via Charlie 1, monitor tower.
10 Charlie 1, monitor tower 3620 Whiskey.
620 Whiskey, San Antonio Tower, eastbound approach is approved, runway 10, clear for takeoff, winds 1205.
Roger that, 10, clear for takeoff 3620 Whiskey. All right, mixture is set, flaps are set, fuel pump is on. And we have our clearance for takeoff, runway 10. Okay, you ready for departure, son?
Yeah.
All right, we have been approved for eastbound as well, so all is good. All right, she is rolling. Full power is set. Airspeed is alive. 60. And we're rotating. That's trimmer. Instruments are looking good. And we're out of Class Delta airspace, so we can actually We can change frequencies if we want to, but we're going to leave it there for now, just in case they need us for something. All right, we're climbing to 7,500. We're going eastbound at about 400 feet to go. All right, we're at 7,500. As far up as we can go. We're under Class Bravo, and we're, I said, flying VFR. We'll go ahead and do the autopilot on. Put it on GPSS mode. She'll take us all the way to Higginsville. And the sun is coming up. In Denver, Colorado, you know, it's when you take off, especially with the density altitude, there's a lot of things that you have to consider, and temperature is one of them. So the thing is, you want to take off actually, especially when you're loaded. We have full fuel tanks, and we have a lot of luggage, so we're pretty heavy. Wow, right now it is showing 64 degrees. So there is an inversion. So down on the ground it was 48. Up here it is 64 at 7,500 feet. So that just comes to show you your performance is going to slack at 7,500 feet and 64 degrees. So that being said, you know, this is why I do like to take off early in the morning, as early as possible here in Denver. And that is to take advantage of the density altitude. Otherwise, you know, you will not get a really good climb rate, and that to me in itself is not ideal. So you kind of have to balance things out. So there are a lot of factors, but nevertheless, here we are at the break of dawn. I do love and enjoy these flights early in the morning. They're really nice. Not to mention the air is smoother. Now, the other thing is the importance of takeoff procedures. It is something that you have to always be aware of. Always be aware of your speeds for rotation and all of that good stuff. And not to mention, in a place like Denver, Colorado, with the high density altitude, you must take note of that. Okay, this airplane does not perform the same at sea level as it does at 7,500 feet. Now, the Saratoga that I have, the turbo Saratoga, it disregards density altitude, so you always, you know, use the same power settings, whether, you know, you're at sea level or high density altitude. However, the one thing you will notice, without a doubt, is that you're gonna eat up ground very, very fast, because with a high density altitude, the air is thinner, and you're going to travel faster over the ground. So the runways out here in Denver, that's why you're going to notice that runways out here are a lot longer than the runways that you will typically find in the East Coast at lower elevations. So you want to make sure that you have your proper takeoff procedures. That includes setting your flaps, and if you do not use 10 degrees of flaps on this airplane, even though you can take off without flaps, it's going to go through a lot of runway. It will not want to get off the ground. So 10 degrees of flaps is ideal. And of course, if you're going to do a soft field takeoff, then you use 25 degrees of flaps. So whenever we took off, the workload, it's pretty demanding. So whenever you're doing the workload by yourself as a pilot in command, single pilot in command, it can get pretty challenging and overwhelming. And that was not even an IFR takeoff in IMC conditions. It gets worse. So if we were taking off in IFR IMC conditions, there's a whole lot more that you have to do. But you definitely have to be ready for that, because it's very, very challenging. There are three main ways that you can go to your destination, and that is through GPS. You can do VORs, or you can do pilot reckoning. We call it dead reckoning. When I was being instructed as a pilot back in the 1990s, we called it pilot dead reckoning, which I'm pretty sure that is still standard for today. Not only do I check weather throughout the flight, but you also have to basically do your pre-flights and interpret the weather scenarios throughout your destination, throughout the whole route, which that in itself is very challenging for me, because I make sure that I, you know, pretty much capture just about everything that I possibly can, so that I have no surprises. especially when when I'm flying IFR in possible IMC conditions. But you have to learn how to interpret the maps and all of that good stuff. So so that's one of the things that that is pretty challenging about doing cross-country flights, especially those longer ones, because you can get weather changing in a hurry. And in the wintertime, it's pretty challenging, especially when you have those cold fronts that sweep all the way across the nation. I find it more challenging when I'm going east to west in the wintertime, trying to basically beat systems. When I take off from west to east, it's pretty simple. If the system hasn't gotten to you, then more than likely you're gonna beat it out. So it's easier to plan from west to east than it is east to west on these long cross-country journeys. Now, there are times that you may encounter sudden turbulence scenarios, and I'm okay with light to moderate turbulence at times, but not constant. That'll wear you out real quick. And sometimes you're going to encounter certain weather scenarios, and you have to make quick decisions on the spot, and that's when it gets a little bit complicated and challenging. So yeah, you gotta be quick and decisive on your decision-making skills when you're encountering weather situations. In IFR, it gets a little more complicated. So a lot of times handling ATC communication, especially when we're flying IFR, Javier takes over the radios a lot of times, and he helps out a lot with that. That takes a big load off my shoulders. So just having someone on that right seat handling the radio, especially when you're flying IFR, is extremely helpful. Takes a big load off the pilot. But handling radio communications is one of those things that is very essential, a very essential skill to have, and it keeps you safe because it's communication. Whenever the ATC is expecting you to do something, then you have to know what they're requesting when they ask you to do it, and you have to do it accordingly. If not, they can pretty much cite you or call. They can pretty much call in a deviation, and that's one of the things you don't want on your record. At least I don't. I've never had a deviation yet, and I'm thankful for that. So it's essential to basically have great communication with ATC because they're in charge of a lot of traffic. And then fuel management. So in this airplane, you have 4 tanks, 2 25-gallon tanks, and then the tip tanks on both sides have 17 gallons. And it gives me, it's good roughly for about 5.5 hours of flying, depending on what power settings I use, but that's stretching it. So I usually fly all the way up to 4.5 hours so that I can make sure that I always have at least an hour or more in case unexpected things happen. And believe me, sometimes they do happen. I've had them happen before. So I just don't like the feeling of flying with near empty tanks. I don't like that. So the good thing about the Cherokee 6 is, man, I've always been able to fill up the tanks and go. So yeah, fuel management is pretty essential. So like I said, what I do is I have a timer here, and I set each tank at 30 minutes intervals. And the reason I do 30 minutes is because I like my tanks as balanced as possible. And that'll kind of make the flight go a lot smoother without you having to use a lot of rudder. But I can't get over the temperature up here, 65 degrees. Man, it's April, which, it still should be relatively cold here in Denver. I cannot believe that it's 65 degrees up here. That means today is going to be a pretty hot day.
Timer expired.
Those are like summer temperatures there. So as you can see, timer expires. So let's go ahead and switch it to the left main tank. But since the temperatures are so hot, in order to keep my cylinder temperatures in check, I like to introduce a little more fuel, but at the same time, not too much where I can foul the plugs. So you have to also know your fuel management. So at this power settings that I have, I'm going to probably burn about 50 gallons by the time I get to Higginsville. We'll have 30 gallons left in the tanks, which is probably going to be good for about 2 hours of flying. But we're going to fill up the tanks in Higginsville. And the reason I pick Higginsville, speaking of fuel management, is because fuel is cheaper. You also have to, at least I like to manage my fuel management spendings as well. And the other thing is, in case of unexpected situations, you may want to divert to other airports. And in this map, you can see all the airports that are around the area. So diverting or knowing airports and stuff like that is pretty important in case anything comes about. Now, another thing that I like is, so I have a ring here, which is a glide ring, which pretty much tells me my glide distance. Shall anything go wrong with engine or anything, or I have to put the airplane down real quick. The one thing about flying cross country that I have noticed is that you have a lot of time to learn and familiarize yourself with your airplane. That's one of the things I really enjoy about cross country.
When I'm doing a long cross country flight, I like taking off just before sunup. The air is normally smoother, the temperatures are cooler, and that is important when taking off at a high density altitude, particularly when the airplane is heavy. I also get to appreciate spectacular sunrises from a unique viewpoint. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and have a great day, my friends.